The field of video and media production has undergone more change in the past several decades than it endured in the entirety of its preceding history. Our guest today has experienced that change firsthand. Join us as he shares insights and experiences from a decades-long career in video and film production. The Humanities Mass Communications Department at Norwalk Community College presents Person to Person, the show that introduces you to some of the county's most interesting people.
Yes, that's the sign of the werewolf.
That's just a legend, though, isn't it?
Yes, but like most legends, it must have some basis in fact. Probably an ancient explanation of the dual personality in each of us. How does it go? Even a man who is pure in heart and says his prayers by night may become a wolf when the wolfbane blooms and the autumn moon is bright.
That's funny. That's the same thing the girl in the antique shop said.
Like many of the precocious children of his generation, Peter Gould spent the Saturday evenings of his childhood tuning in to watch classic horror and B films of years past. He delighted in Hammer's tales of Gothic horror, with Peter Cushing as Frankenstein and Christopher Lee as Count Dracula. Over time, his enjoyment grew into a fascination with the craft of filmmaking itself. And from these humble beginnings, Peter Gould has enjoyed a decades-long career in video and film production. And now your host, Christian Nera.
Thank you for joining us for today's edition of Person to Person. Our guest today has enjoyed a career in film and video production spanning several decades, and he's now sharing his knowledge and insights with students at NCC as a teacher. We would like you to meet today's guest, Peter Gould. Hi.
Thanks. It's great to be here.
So throughout our class, we've learned many things that contribute to successful video production. So in your own words, what is your job in video production?
Well, I've done a lot of jobs over the years. I've been a director of photography. I've been a live director. I've been a scripted director. I've been voiceover talent. But the one that I've gravitated to the most, and I think is really what I would consider my primary profession to be today, is editor.
Oh, nice. So can you tell us how you got into video production or into this career?
You know, it's funny, as I was watching the roll-in at the beginning of the show, I was having flashbacks because that perfectly captured my childhood. When I was 8, the pinnacle of every week was the Saturday night scary movie that you'd find on either Channel 5 or Channel 11. And it would either be the old Universal horror movies, Frankenstein, Wolfman, Dracula, or it would be the later versions of those same movies that were done by Hammer Films in the UK. And when I was a little kid, they terrified me. Oh. And when I was a little older, I started to look at them and say, hey, I could do this. I could make this stuff. And I was hooked by the time I was 12.
So it was kind of like you knew you were going to have a passion, right? Like off the bat, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So can you recall any challenges like dealing with video production, and how did you overcome these challenges?
I think the biggest challenge, sadly, was during my education, because I had this huge passion that I developed as a 12-year-old. And I'd actually, by 12 or 13, I'd made a featurette that I was very proud of. And then I got into high school. And there was a TV studio in that high school, and an old, burned-out faculty member who actually talked me out of production. And the stills you're looking at now are, once I got back into it, years later, after almost missing this as a profession, because I was dealing with somebody who had probably tried to make a go of it and failed and retreated into teaching and was by then kind of cynical, and the whole attitude was, hey, have a good time while you're here, kid, but you'll never make a living doing this. You can't unless you have a relative in one of the unions. And that was absolute nonsense, but I didn't know it at the time. So the big challenge was finding my way back in after I'd been talked out of it.
Oh, so you did try to pursue something else in between before you came back to it?
Oh, absolutely. I looked at a career in law. I looked at a career in computers, which were a new thing at the time. Remember, we're thinking the mid to late 70s. And it actually worked out very well because the background in computers, well, of course, everything to do with production is computers now. So it actually worked, but it was purely by accident.
Well, that's pretty good that you got back into it. So obviously the world of production and editing has changed since you started. And what are some of the technological advances have changed to approach your work?
I think probably the biggest change is the change to digital technology. When I was learning to be an editor, you almost can't imagine how that worked at the time. In order to edit video, you needed a record machine, and then you needed one or more playback machines. If we're doing a dissolve from one shot to another, you have to play the shot you're dissolving from on one machine, the one you're dissolving to on the other machine, and then record the result onto the third machine. And you went along selectively, piece by piece by piece, to build the finished product. What happens if you get an hour and 45 minutes into your 2-hour production and the producer says, hey, you know that shot that's about 2 minutes in? Could we make that a second longer? How do you do that? You can't. It's all recorded on tape. So you had to redo everything from that 2-minute point on all the way to the end. And then Avid came along, and I know we're using Avid here at NCC, and everybody's familiar with it. And I know also there are all these other platforms. There's Final Cut, there's Premiere. None of that existed yet. It was all this tape-to-tape stuff. And then Avid came out with the video equivalent of word processing, where you're cutting and pasting pictures. And you get all the way through your project and you go, can we have an extra second, or can we take a second out, or 8 frames or whatever it is? And you just go in and do it, and it's done.
Yeah.
That was like magic in the
way easier.
Right. I mean, it's just, and now we take it for granted. But that jump from this laborious process with all this expensive hardware. Keep in mind, a videotape machine at the level we're talking about, you would buy instead of an expensive car. These were very, very expensive machines. They were expensive to maintain. They broke down a lot. They had head drums that wore out because the tape going through the head drum would sand off the video heads. So you'd spend, somebody'd spend $12,000 just to replace the heads in one of those machines. So to go to this, it's just hugely liberating. Now you can focus on the creative part and not purely on the technology. So
when you start a new project, how do you maintain efficiency while editing?
There are a lot of things you can do. One thing I try as hard as I can to do, and you can't do it on every project, is I try to be a part of the production team from the beginning. I try to collaborate with the director right from the beginning of the project so that I have some sense of what I'm going to be getting to work with. Because as you know, having worked with editing already, we are a prisoner to the materials we work with. If we have great stuff to work with, you can make magic happen on the screen. If you don't have the right cutaway at the right moment, or you have something that was shot entirely in a master shot and you have a great beginning and a great end and no way to combine them together, you're shackled. So one thing is to try to be part of the creative team from the beginning. The other is to really carefully organize. I make bin after bin after bin, and in each bin are elements that are related to that particular moment. If I have multiple takes of something, they're in a bin. If I have elements of scenes that work together in some ways, they're in a bin, so that I can grab what I need and go right to work on it, as opposed to going through this huge mass of material and going, God, I know there's this shot of something. I know, I've seen it. Where the heck is it? And you spend 20 minutes trying to find it. If you've done the work in advance and it's all sorted out,
makes it easier.
It makes it a lot easier, and again, you can focus on creativity instead of just trying to get through the process.
Well, I'm gonna try to be using that advice now. So, is there any differences, substantial differences between post-production, like live production and ordinary post-production? And is any like more rewarding than the other?
That's a loaded question. I don't think they're more rewarding. They're just rewarding in a different way. When you're doing post-production, you have all the time that you need presumably to weave together the elements you have to work with into something that's great. And it's a methodical process. It's a thinking process. A lot of times I'll get partway through a sequence and I'll walk away from it for hours or even a day or two and come back and look at it with fresh eyes. When you're directing live, you are in effect editing to the screen, but you're editing to the audience. And it's very much working without a net. You take the wrong shot, they saw it already.
Yeah.
But it's intoxicating. You've directed live. You know what this feels like, right?
Yeah.
There's there's a certain amount of stage fright at the beginning, but if you get past that, the emotional feeling of doing things live without a wire, where it's going right out to the audience and they see what you've done, it's exhilarating. So one is this kind of methodical step-by-step process where you get to polish it and you make it great. And the other is it's a live event, it's in the moment, and when you walk away at the end of the day, it's done. And whatever happened, happened. But at the end of my TV1 class, after they've all directed, and I never do this before because it's scared to death, there's an Emmy Awards where somebody shot cell phone video inside the control booth, and it's a split screen of the cell phone video inside the control booth and what the audience saw. And you're listening to the director, and he's cutting faster and faster and faster, and these shots are going all over the place. But what you can hear is they're having a ball. They're not scared. It's not a scary thing. It's like a sport. And when you've done that and you come out of that at the end of the day, it takes a while to come back down to earth. Yeah. So they're both hugely rewarding and very different from each other.
Yeah, because you're probably like on such a high up like spot.
Oh, absolutely.
And like in your mind, you're just like really probably excited and.
Yep.
Yeah, so I know what you mean. Like I can only imagine what probably that feels like, especially directing like an Emmy Award, like award show.
I mean, I did my first live show for News 12 in the late 80s, I think. Maybe it was 1990, but I think it was 89. I still remember it now.
Yeah. Because
I was the TD, and it's a live event. It's a remote production truck with 5 cameras, and I was the TD for the show, which I thought was huge at the time. And then the director, who knew me, said, "Hey, I need to take a break. You want to carry it for a while?" And suddenly, I'm the TD and the director, and this isn't going to tape. This is going out live to the whole viewership, and I think it took days to come back down to earth after that. And I still remember it now, all these years later.
That was probably a great experience.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So can you tell us your experiences on teaching video and media production and any like challenges or any difficulties that come with that?
Well, you know, it's funny, when you've done something for a long time and you've internalized the basics and you don't think about them anymore, it's really interesting to come back and teach, because it forces you to go back and think very consciously about concepts that you just have incorporated into your everyday life. You know, the 180-degree line, cutting on the action, making sure that you shot enough cutaways, all these things, we just do them. We don't think about them anymore. I mean, they're in the planning stage of a show, but to actually go back and now consciously think about it, it really kind of lets you go back and re-examine the basics, and that is very useful.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, I always think back to when I was a student, and that cynical old faculty member who probably shouldn't have been teaching anymore literally talked me out of this industry, and I try to be the polar opposite of that. I want my love of what I do to be infectious. I want a class full of students to come out of that class and say to themselves, this guy loves what he does, and I do. And I want them to understand, there's no limit to what you can do. You come out of here and you decide you want to do this for a living, you can do it. Don't ever let anybody talk you out of it. And if I teach nothing else, I want that to be in their minds as they leave.
Oh, this is getting me motivated too. So has your understanding in production evolved or shifted with your experiences of teaching?
Well, as I said, going back and re-examining the basics is always helpful, and especially it helps me when I'm dealing with new crew people who may be new to the work. because I don't make some of the assumptions that I used to make. I try to remember now that if you're new in the business, you're coming out of this teaching environment. And I try to be as supportive to new crew as I am to students, because it's a little scary. It's a little scary to be in a studio for the first time. It's a little scary to be on a set for the first time. If you're dealing with an overbearing director who's short on patience and yells a lot, and I've worked for those people, that makes the experience unpleasant. And this should be fun.
Yeah.
You know, we should be having a good time and doing something that entertains an audience or teaches or motivates or whatever the project is supposed to do.
Yeah. And for our last question, do you have any parting advice for any future students or people now that are looking to get into the field of video production?
I think I said it already. Don't let anybody stand in your way. When you come out of these classes, you have an almost unlimited array of possibilities in front of you. Find what you want to do. Take some time to figure it out, but don't let anybody talk you out of it, because people who are trying to talk you out of pursuing your dream,
they just don't want you to be successful in any
they're
way.
standing in your way.
Yeah.
Don't let anybody stand in your way. That's the best advice I think I can give.
Well, thank you for that, because that was actually kind of hit me. Like, I feel like walking out, I'm going to feel more motivated about, because I do want to pursue career some. I don't know exactly what yet, but I know I want to do something in this field. So thank you for that motivational talk as well.
Cool.
And today we got to meet someone who's worked for decades in the film and video production and has contributed to countless projects over the years. We've also heard his perspective on what it's like to teach production here at NCC, and hopefully what he's discussed today with us will provide insight as we continue to learn film and media production. We would like to thank Peter for joining us today, so thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me on.
No problem. And we hope you enjoyed meeting one of Fairfield County's most interesting residents, and we hope you join us next time to meet another. Thank you, and have a good day.
I don't get in front of the camera that often.
This has been Person to Person. This has been a Norwalk Community College student production.